Hello, Husker fans. Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. Well, the open practice is over, and there's still a few lingering Husker fans over here getting autographs and pictures with Husker players who practiced for about 2.5 hours out here. First real open practice we've ever seen in the Scott Frost era. They didn't have a scrimmage today. There wasn't any sort of live tackling. There was a little bit of live, what they call thudding up, but there wasn't any real live tackling out there. We saw a lot of 7-on-7 drills, a lot of group drills, a lot of some run scheme drills, things like that, but nothing that you would describe as, sort of a live tackling scrimmage situation. But here's kind of the things that we saw. Very impressed with Nebraska's receivers. Obviously, you got to prove that in the game scenario next year, right? You got to do it against Ohio State and Wisconsin and Iowa and all those teams. But in this setting, they look pretty good. Oliver Martin and Omar Manning really had good days. Samari Toure was very good underneath. Xavier Betts caught a couple of nice passes, and then they just got a real depth there. Will Nixon in the slot, a few other guys. I mean, I could probably name 10 guys that I thought were pretty darn good today. But the two guys that stood up the most were Oliver Martin and Omar Manning. So they're able to get deep, they're able to get by guys, and they do have a little extra gear, and so they were very impressive. The cornerbacks had a pretty good day too. Cam Taylor-Britt is clearly the best athlete of that group, and maybe the best athlete on the team. It's pretty obvious how good of a player Cam is. He had an incredible interception down here on this sideline. Javen Wright also had a really good interception. So you always get a little, when you do those 7-on-7 skeleton things, you always get a sense of what that group of players looks like. And so a pretty impressive receivers and then some decent defensive back play. Okay, the quarterbacks. Well, Adrian Martinez does look better, a little lighter, throwing the ball well, deep. Logan Smothers, that's a work in progress as a passer. The thing that I think Smothers is probably best at is running. We didn't see a lot of that today because they're in the green jerseys. His passing was hot and cold. There's a little bit of, you can tell that he's thinking a little bit on that footwork, and at times the ball gets out a little wobbly. Heinrich Haarberg is interesting. So at one point today, they had Haarberg doing his own sort of station because they're trying to get as many reps as possible with backups. And the bottom line is Haarberg's got a lot of skills. He's kind of a wild colt. I mean, he throws the ball a long way, 65, 70 yards. He's got a legit long arm. The ball does jump out of his hand. Sometimes it jumps into the sidelines a little bit, over to the stands. I mean, he kind of throwing it all over the place, and a loose live wire athlete, different a little bit from Smothers, who's a little bit more coiled and intense, and certainly different from Matt Masker, who clearly has a mastery of the offense and could run it and throws from a lot of different arm slots. A lot of running backs out today. Gabe Irvin was out today. Sevion Morrison was out today. That's unfortunate. Ramir Johnson was out today. So the three guys that we saw were Ronald Tompkins, Marvin Scott, and Jaquez Yant. Looked okay. Hard to tell. When the guys aren't getting tackled, kind of hard to tell, but it did look like Tompkins was fully healthy and running well. Scott looked pretty good as well. On the defensive side of the ball, hard to tell. The defensive guys were down at the other end of the field, so it's kind of hard to assess at times what all was going on. But I can tell you this. The first team defensive line was Ty Robinson, DeAndre Thomas, and Damian Daniels. And they all looked pretty darn good. Feldarius Payne was in there at times as an outside linebacker. Caleb Tanner was in there. Garrett Nelson. Your two inside linebackers were either Chris Kolaveric and Luke Reimer, or Reimer and Nick Henrich. Your safeties obviously were Markel Dismuke and Deontay Williams. And your corners were Cam Taylor-Britt and Quentin Newsome. Newsome's clearly still in a battle for that number one spot opposite Taylor-Britt with Nadab Joseph and Braxton Clark. I'd say more Clark than Joseph. Newsome does seem to be the number one guy there. Isaac Gifford was working at that sort of nickel spot that JoJo Doman would normally inhabit if he was healthy. He's not healthy, and he's not doing a lot this spring. And then Javen Wright was also there as well. So watch Wright, watch Gifford, and then they're still working on the safeties are still a work in progress. The other corners are still a work in progress. Not a ton of special teams today. We saw a little bit of not really field goal. Connor Culp was out today. The punters were, they didn't do a lot. I think they worked somewhere else in the stadium. They didn't work in here. And so they had a little bit of punting drills, and it wasn't terrific. It was just so-so. And then they did some kickoff stuff, and the best kickoff guy of the group was Tyler Crawford, left footer. Connor Culp didn't kick today, so the guys left over were Tyler Crawford. All right, that's about what happened. It wasn't a scrimmage setting, so I can't tell you, hey, this guy had 37 yards or anything like that. It does look like a team that's going to be a little bit better on offense. It does look like a team that's going to be very tough to run on defense. Nebraska didn't do a lot of running today, and I don't know how well they would have run the ball. We'll have to wait until the spring game to find out how well they do that. And if that's what it is, if Nebraska's more explosive on offense and really hard to run against on defense, hey, that might be a combination for a winning season. And at this point, that's all these fans are looking for. There were about 3,200 of them here today. A couple of Go Big Red chants. They had a standing ovation near the end. And then at the end, the players went over and kind of ran. I guess they signed some autographs and took some photos. It's, I guess, a gesture here. And hopefully everybody stayed safe over there, wore their masks, all the rest. But that's all we have here from today. We'll be back on Monday to talk more. We will have the defensive coaches, Travis Fisher and Mike Dawson. We'll be talking on Monday, along with some players that we have never talked to before. I think Kalaveric is going to be one of them. So until then, I'm Sam McKewon with the Omaha World-Herald, Big Red Today, and Omaha.com. Thanks for listening.